team, we need to track all of our personnel. The senior manager wants up-to-date numbers and charts. The HR department can't provide what we need. We need to get creative.
How are we tracking our clients? I need current information on who, how many, and in what areas they are associated with. We will need this for managing our clients and for presentations.
I have to start organizing my personal art for my home business. I now have so many paintings I've done, I'm starting to lose track. I need a tool to track my artwork and who I'm selling it to. We now have a tool to track all of our needs.
I've used that tool before.
It can track human resources, Bob's clients, Susan's art for her home business, and much more.
It's called Tracker.
Let's get started.
Welcome to the Tracker tool. I'm Gary and I will be your host showing the tool for this video. The Tracker can keep track of many things for leaders, managers, and business owners. It is an easy to use tool to track human resources, personnel, clients, real estate properties, real estate renters or sales, automotive fleets such as those for sale or rent, artwork, and much more. The Tracker tool comes ready to use with graphs to show status and results. The Tracker tool is easily customizable for your particular need. This video shows how to immediately start tracking and then shows more detail of how to use and customize. This video has multiple sections of topics. There is a banner that shows what part of the video you are in, so you can easily skip and move around to see what you need to see, from topic to topic.
This view shows all of the Tracker tool main topics and their subtopics, which include Quick Start for getting started now, Overview of the full tool, Setup showing how to quickly do a one-time setup, Data entry and how to enter information, Customization, how to customize the tool for your needs, Alerts and warnings to help prevent errors, Miscellaneous showing creative use, helpful tips, and some do's and don'ts. This Quick Start section reviews entering data.
Once you've installed the Tracker tool, you'll see a shortcut in your Start menu and as well on your desktop. And when you click either one of those, it'll take you to this folder where you can see here's the Tracker. This is the actual Tracker tool. It also comes with an example. The example, both of these are pre-populated with selectable items for values. The example only comes pre-populated with multiple rows of personnel or items that have been entered just for your visual see, and we can look at some of the reports that show up. The Tracker tool itself comes empty except for the pre-populated selections and the initial two entries that can be overwritten. So let's go ahead and get started. When you open up the tool, you'll probably be in the instruction tab and you can see the Tracker icon. And to get quickly started, we're in the example only. I can quickly switch to what you'll be seeing when you receive the tool. Let's get that over. And when you open it, you may have to select up at the top here, Enable Content. This does have VBA code and macros, so you can select that. And then we'll get off the instruction tab, which you should go through. And since this is a quick start, you want to get started right away. Here are the minimum of 2 rows that are required in the Data Entry tab. And these are just sample data, and you can overtype this. So immediately in the blue banner are the headers, and you simply enter each row as an individual or person that you're wanting to add to this list. Or if you're not using it as a human resource personnel tracker, and there's other selections for that, and I'll show that in a little while. But each of these represents a person or entity thing that you're looking to track. So I have a sample note here, and I'm just going to change that to Gary's note. And then here's the person's name. We can change the name to Smith Jane, and you simply go across to each item. You can either select items or manually type in whatever value you need, and you keep marching across and looking at the headers of what the data indicates. And there's about over 80 items on this list. I usually like to go left to right, filling in or selecting the various values, and you keep going across and select until that's fully populated, and then now this row is fully populated. For the next one, you do the same thing. You can enter your note, change the person's name, which will have let's see, Ralph Jones, but that's not in the order we want, so we're going to change that. And to edit something, you can either select, I'm going to hit the escape button just for a moment, you can just simply overtype, or you can select that cell and edit up here in the edit area. To add a new person, you simply select the row, these numbers on the left, these are the row numbers. I'm going to right click that and say insert, and each of these items show up as orange, indicating it's missing data. So I can type in there's another Jones, Bob, and keep going across and entering each piece of information that I want. Some of these cells are free text entry, some are selectable, and so you want to select, if possible. Free entry text is not recommended unless you absolutely have to. In some cases, if you try to do a free text, it'll give you an alert that that can't be done. You must select from the selectable options, and I will show you later on how to select those options in following sections in this video. But that is basically how you get started entering data. And now I'm going to actually switch to another view of where everything is pre-populated. This is the view where everything is pre-populated with people. And I'm just going to scroll down here, and you can see that we have 20 people here, as you can see by the number 20 up here. And what I've done was, I'm going to scroll back up. I've gone all the way across each of these, under each of these headers for each person, and I'm going to highlight the first row. There's the first row that's highlighted. There's the second row or person, and then I'm going to use the scroll to the right button at the lower right, and you can see there's a lot of data here that can be used. You don't have to use everything. For tracking people, human resources like to track a lot of this. The good thing is, I'm going to scroll back here. The good thing is, the more data you enter, the better your results are going to show in the graphs and the charts. But that is initially how you enter the data. If you want to delete a person, you simply go to the left here, you select a row, see how it's highlighted, go back to this row number. I'm going to right click and select delete right here, delete. And now that person or entity has been deleted, and you'll see the number reduces to 19. 19 is the visible number of items in this selection list.
This quick start section reviews data results.
Now we're going to review the results of the information that we've entered. In this case, we're using this as a human resource tracking tool. You can select any other use, clients, artwork, automotive, whatever you want, or create your own. Right now we have it set for tracking people, which includes what contract they're working on, where in the org chart they reside, salaries, and a whole lot more. So basically, we've been using the data entry tab shown at the bottom here. Now we're going to look at the dashboard view. So you simply click that, and this is a typical spreadsheet. And now we see some charts with data, and there's titles, subtitles, and the numbers for all the data that was entered. And I'm going to scroll down here a little bit, and if you're a spreadsheet user, these little black lines show where the screen is frozen, so it's not going to overwrite. And now we can see this one particular chart, stat by state. It shows where the states are and how many people, where your staff is at. We can scroll down a little bit more, staffing by department, the number of people and in what department they're in. So there's a whole lot of charts and graphs here that you can see. This is the dashboard view. If you want to see more detailed information about what goes into creating the dashboard, you can look at Show Report tabs, and you simply click that once, and then it opens up a series of tabs across the bottom, and each tab, such as Report 1 Staffing, it has the data chart behind what is shown for the data. So this is always auto-populated. There's no need to change it, although there are some selections which we'll show later on changing the report title and some other options that are available. It is always recommended that you save your file frequently. Hit the Save button at the top. Also, after you do some data entry, it is also recommended you do a file save as, which means you're going to change the name, or in this case, we want to change the version. So I'm going to go back a little bit, and I'm going to switch tabs just to show you what a version is going to look like. At the top here, you can see it says Tracker Tool TVer 18LR01. That's likely the name of the file when you first receive it, the tool. You can open it up and it's going to look like this, except for the one we previously added. Let me delete that back out. Okay, we'll delete that in a little bit. Some of these rows are not deletable, and so there is an indication for that. Another way to remove data is simply highlight it and hit the delete button, and everything will just go away. But the point here is when you do a file save as, I would recommend only changing the R number at the end. So R01 is what you received, save it as R2, and the number keeps going up. This number is important because it's going to show up in your graphs and charts, is to indicate, like right here at the bottom, we're working with file T version 18L Rev 2, and the number on the left shows what particular report it came from. This is good configuration management. So if the power goes out, something's not working right, you can close it out and always revert back. You can do another, if you work on it for another 20 minutes, enter a bunch of data, save as, do a save, and then a save as, and we'll go to Rev 3. And here we are at Rev 3. You can show it, see it appear at the top, the file name, the tool name, and then also again back in the dashboard view, it changes to R03, which also shows at the top.
This overview section reviews the instructions.
As we jump into the instructions for the overview, this is a good time to remind you that the files you receive once installed will look something like what's on the screen. There'll be an example only file, the tracker tool file, and two other files, a README and the executable. You won't ever have to use that executable. You'll be using the actual tracker tool. But in going through the videos here, I'm going to open both because the example only is pre-populated. And you'll notice the version now is 19L_R01. That stands for revision 01. That 01 number is the only number you should change in the file name. So when you double click that, you'll see that the tool comes up, and as indicated before, if you see this enable content, you'll have to click on that to get started. Now, using again good configuration management, we want to do a file save as, so we preserve the original file, and we only want to change the number at the end. So we're going to change it to 02 and then save. We already selected save as you can see up here. And now you'll see this is a standard spreadsheet, and there are multiple tabs along the bottom. Right now we're looking at the instruction overview. There's a banner at the top. This is editable, and I'll show you later how to do that. There's an end user license agreement, and then as you scroll down, there's additional information and some custom setup, a little bit of descriptiveness on what each of the areas mean, how to change the file name, and then there's some highlights here of using the screen and the layout examples. Further below, we'll actually look at, here's a description of the various tabs and what they're used for. Further down, there's a color code scheme. So on different tabs, you'll see different colors on the cells and text. And this describes the general meaning of what those colors mean. I think as you go through and start using the tool, it'll become fairly obvious. There's some symbols, cell patterns. For instance, there's this color, which means do not edit, and then some alerts. And then there's the user license agreement. So in order to use the tool, you have to agree to that. And then if you there are hyperlinks in here, you click that and that'll take you back up to the top.
This overview section reviews entering data.
Moving across the bottom, we're going to be looking at the data entry tab, which is the main tab which you'll be editing and adding information. So as you can see right now, the tool comes with 3 basic entries, which is required. You have to have a minimum of 3 to make this tool work. And you can simply overwrite each one of these. Just select the cell and type in Smith, Jane, and as you go across, each one can be edited. On the right, there is the scroll bar at the bottom right here. Right now, I'm going to scroll all the way to the left, which is where you're going to be starting. And each one, you simply enter in your information. There's some error alerts in this top section. This shows all the errors if there are errors. And then you'll notice the little red triangles. If you just hover the mouse, you don't have to click. Some information will pop up about that particular cell or the row. The blue headers here, those are predefined headers. They are editable, and we'll show that later, how to do that. This row here shows the count of the visible cells. So right now there's 3, shows 3, and so there's 3 cells that are visible. This row here shows how to use the filter and sort. So if these are not in alphabetical order, you can single click this, and then you can select to put it in alphabetical order or reverse alphabetical order. You can also eliminate the view of some of the items. For instance, right now we're showing these 3 entries. If I want to get rid of those, I deselect that and simply say I want to see Sue and Joe. Select OK, and now you're only seeing Sue and Joe. And to get that bottom banner, show blanks. And now you'll see that the number here is only 2 because 2 of the cells are populated. If one of the cells was not populated, such as if I hit delete, you'll see the cell turns orange as an alert, and we'll go through some alerts later, and then the number 1 appears at the top. So you can go across. My recommendation is that if there is a topic that you don't need, simply select NA, but keep going all the way across and use those headers that you think are applicable. Now I'm going to unfilter to get all 3 back. And you'll see it still shows 2 at the top and 3 over here. That's because the cell is empty. So we can enter a person back in there. And it has to be a unique name. And so if there's here's an example of an error. As if an error occurs, likely the cell will change color. Red is a more severe alert. Orange is generally if it's empty or a duplicate, or if there's a TBD selected. And then at the top you'll see what the error is. Now we'll show a little bit later on how to use these errors. You can select which error to see and then use the hyperlink to go there. So So as you go across all the way to the end, keep using entering the data you want. The only cells that you should not edit are those in this peach flesh color. So you'll see on the top left here it says restricted columns. Do not edit these. These have special formulas in them, and they're lookup tables, and they're calculations that are made based on other information that you enter. So these are the only colored ones that you cannot enter. And if you scroll across to the end, there are 2 unused columns over here. It'll say unused, but everything else you can freely enter or select the information.
This overview section reviews the dashboard.
After you've entered some data, you can then view it in the graphs or the dashboard. I switched the view to using the example only because it's pre-populated with more individuals. And now we're going to switch over to the dashboard view. And by the way, on the data entry tab, any of these headers that are in color green, that means that it's used in a pre-canned or preset report. And then we'll see some of those reports later, and those will be editable, but we're going to switch to the dashboard view. The top of the dashboard has some tables that indicate some of the information or statistics that you just entered, and you can scroll down and there's different reports that you can see across here. Each one of these reports is somewhat customizable, and we'll show that later in the reports tab. At the top of this you'll see some general information about what we're looking at here, and then if you want, you can also do a print. Everything is customizable for printing as well. Each of these pieces of information comes from another tab, one of the report tabs, which we'll show in a while. And the headers are also going to be customizable, and we'll show that later in another section.
This overview section reviews sending email.
Moving over to the email list tab, which is at the bottom here, you simply single click it. This is a view where you can actually send out an email directly from the tool. The tool will use your default email system that's on your computer. At the top here, most email systems have what's called a delimiter, which when you enter in multiple email addresses, separates the addresses. Some use a comma, some use a semicolon. In this case, I'm using a semicolon. And then you can enter in the subject and your message. This particular use is somewhat limited, where the total text between the subject, the body of the email, and the length of all of the email addresses is limited. There is a workaround, and I'll show you that in just a moment. So right now, if you wanted to change the topic, you simply double click in there and you type in what you want. This is more, and I'll just delete that back out just for the moment. And down here you'll see these links. So if you want to send an individual email, you simply click the link and it'll open up your email system. Alternatively, if you want to send it to a group, you'll see the color on the right here is red, and we'll zoom in on that just a little bit. And that red is indicating that there's too much information within all of the selections. So what we're going to do is I'm going to zoom back out, and I'm going to filter out some of these people. Perhaps I don't want to send it to everyone. I want to send it to Al, Bob, Cal, and Ed. So select those. Again, this is the same selection we looked at in the data entry. You OK that, and now it's selectable. You can click this, send your email. Or if you want to include everyone, this is a little bit more customized, and we'll get into more of this detail. You can use this button to update this area here and do a copy paste into your email system. Right now we're just doing an overview, but the point is that this view can be used to send emails, customize emails to groups or individuals.
This overview section reviews the reports.
Moving over to show the overview of reports, you'll notice at the bottom where my mouse is, there's a tab that says Show Report Tabs. This is the only tab that's currently displaying for reports. You simply, when you click this, it'll expand it, and now you have multiple other report tabs that show up. To hide all those tabs and go back, single click, and it has the one tab. So we're going to open all these up. And now there's multiple tabs here for each report, and there's a series of reports. The way reports are generally set up, there's an information, alert, and error checking at the top, some basic data on how the report is updated and where the data is coming from. There's a section here that says what data is used in the tables for the report. This is a table for the report. This is not editable. If you try to edit, double click, you'll get the message. On many of these reports over to the right, there may be an alternative way to customize your report and some information. We'll go through that later. And then over on the right is the actual chart itself. So I'm going to scroll a little bit here. And each of these charts is somewhat customizable in multiple ways, and we'll go through that later. So I'm going to scroll back to where we were, and I'm going to go to the next report, report 2. And it's the same setup where you have your error checking, basic information, what data is used in the report, a table for the report, and this chart on the right is produced from that table. And again, there's some options for customizing the chart. And so as you scroll across to each one of these, some are larger, some are smaller, some are quite lengthy. This particular one shows people by state, but the same pattern exists. Now, each one, without going through each one, I'm going to scroll across to the right and bypass the org chart and go straight to the staff. This one has a manual entry area for tracking different numbers over time, and we're going to go through in more detail on that. The next one is general information for the dashboard. So each of these reports and the information from these reports is shown in the dashboard. This is sort of the report tabs are like the master of what shows up in the dashboard. I'm going to scroll a little bit more to the right to see a little bit more of the reports. This report on attrition is quite large. It's a little bit unique in that if we scroll to the right, you'll see where it says view charts. On the left, it says make selections in green. So there's some selections and it says do not edit. And I'm going to scroll pretty far to the right. There are some various options for this particular chart where you can select what type of calendar, fiscal or by annual calendar. Some other options we'll go through in detail later. Further to the right, there's some more tables that are used to produce the chart, and this is the chart. It looks a little busy. It's because it is. There's a lot of information on it. I'll scroll here just to show you. As you notice, as I scroll up, this top part is fixed and it eclipses it. The way you can see the entire chart is you can use the zoom feature at the bottom here. I'm using it in a slightly different way. And then in this particular tab, there's additional charts at the bottom. Again, these show up in the dashboard view.
This overview section reviews the user tabs.
I'm going to scroll to the left here and collapse the reports because now we're going to be looking at the user tabs. So I hit the hide report tabs and they're all collapsed, and I scroll to the right at the bottom. It says show user edit tabs. I'm going to click that once and it adds in these other additional tabs. These are tabs where the user is free to add any information they want. They can produce ad hoc reports, templates, general information. There's free text. You can define your own report here. And then if you have any particular notes, this particular section, I've added notes for where if somebody wants to use this to track clients, and I'm going to show a whole bunch of different ways on how to customize this. This particular section is notes for if you want to track by clients. In potential use, you don't have to use it this way, but these are some recommendations. And so the user notes, again, you can hide them and then use as needed. You may not have to use those at all, but they're there for your use.
This overview section reviews the setup tabs.
Here's the overview for the setup tabs. The setup tab, again, similar to the other tab for show reports and users, is a single tab, and it says show tab. If you want, you can single click on that, and you can see it expands out for 3 more tabs. The 3 tabs, I'm going to start at the right. This is a section, the table header converter, where you can create your customized headers for the other tabs. So each row is a single set of headers. For instance, this row is for human resource tracking, or some people would call it an HR tracker. Here's your client tracker row. If you want to have an organization with club members, or you can have a religious church membership, which also tracks what area they're working in, who's a member, who's participating, a lot of different ways. And then there's a few more here. You can track artwork, real estate, and even vehicles. So basically, you go through and edit this and make selections in another tab to make them show up. And we'll go through in detail later. One of the other tabs, if you're using it for human resources, that you can predefine salary grades, which are not defined here because this is in the color that is not editable. These are defined in another tab, then they show up in this tab, and then you can enter the mid-range or the band, the span of between the quartiles, the second and third quartile, at the low end and the top end. Low end of where the second quartile starts and where the third ends, and it'll do some calculations for you, and that'll show up in the main entry tab once you get using it. All of this setup, generally, it's a one-time deal. It takes just a few minutes to get it set up, and you're up and running. The final setup tab is called Setup Data. This is a very simple tab. It's going to say there's only 2 entry slots. One is for the name of your company, so I could change this to Gary's Company. And then this section here, you select what's the purpose or use of your the tool. So when you select this here, what you're doing is telling it which set of headers to use that you define in the Table Header Converter tab. So if I wanted to use client tracking, right now we're set, you can see it's HRE for human resource. If I select client tracking, if I scroll back to the data entry tab, now it changed the names of what I told it to show across the top. You'll see in this tab here, or excuse me, this cell, it shows client name. If I go back to that setup tab and change it back to human resources, and I go back to the data entry tab, and it switches back to all the headers for human resources. So those are the basic setup. Once you're done with that, you generally don't have to go back and update it. Maybe the quartile one if the numbers change or you want to add salary grades. And then to close that out, you're going to select the hide button, and then it minimizes them all again.
This setup section reviews the table headers.
Moving into how to set up your table headers, and we're going to talk about several setup areas. We're going to specifically be looking at the table header and the table header converter. So what you want to do is at the lower bottom, you'll see the mouse and you see the show setup tabs. It's highlighted, and you want to click that, and it expands it out to 3 tabs. And let's take a look at the table header converter. This table is set up similar with some of the other tabs with information on the top left. The top row has the general or generic headers by their name within the tool but what you're really going to be looking at is from this row down. These are specifically predefined, some are predefined headers, such as human resources, and it has the information for each header. These headers are actually used in the data entry tab. So right now we're in the table header converter, and when we make changes here based on your data setup selection, which we'll show in a moment, will affect your data entry. So right now I'm going to switch to data setup quickly, and we have HRE human resource headers selected. This is a selectable item. I'm going to go back to the table headers, HRE. This is the set of headers in this row that we're looking at. The top area for each of the headers below shows which ones are used in a report. If there's a green yes, and the text below it shows up in green, that means that that information is used in one of the reports provided with this tool. So right now we have human resource selected, HRE, and you'll notice the first header is manager notes. There's 3 that are not used, and then it starts out with employee or candidate name. These headers are used in the data entry tab. Let me switch back to the data entry tab at the lower left. And these headers in blue going across are the headers that were defined in the table header converter. Once you do this, you'll never have to do this again unless you want to go back and tweak and change it. This is generally a one-time setup. So it says employee or candidate name. I'm going to go back to the table header converter, and I'm going to switch the headers to the client tracking tool. So you notice previously in this particular column, when we had HRE selected, it said employee or candidate name. When I select to use client as using this as a client tracker, it's going to use this whole new set of headers for each piece of information in the data entry tab. So what was previous employee or candidate name will now become client's company name. And how we do that is we go to the setup data tab over on the left here in the center area. Click that once, and it allows you to select what type of header you want. We're going to select the client tracking. Now it's totally tracking by the client headers. I'm going to switch back to the data entry tab, and here we have the client's name, client group ID, and client is on staff or active. Just keep in mind those 3 names, because those 3 names come from this tab that you preset in the table header converter under client. Client's name, group ID, and on staff. So these items are completely changeable. Anything in this light green color you can change. So instead of, let's say instead of client's company name, we just want to say the client name. And instead of saying client group ID, we can say client ID. So we simply edit that here. Now we already have client selected as our header group. Back to the setup data tab, it's already selected. And to see the results, we're going to the data entry tab. And now we have the new titles that were predefined in the table header converter. Similarly, you can update any of these others. Anything in green you can change. So for instance, if you're tracking sales, right now we have client tracking selected, but if you want to track by sales and set your own set of headers, go to the setup data, change your headers here, go to the setup data tab, select SLS, and then see the results in the data entry tab. And now we see there's a new set of information. This is also even more customizable by adding in your own client group. This one I've previously added CLG client groups. Let's say they're client entities, CLE, and it goes by your particular liking to wording. Okay, and instead of my client's name, you may want to say my client's entity, entities name, entities. Well, let's see, there we go. And that's plural. Okay, got it selected. I go to the setup data because that's the new set we want to use. And here it is. This is a one-time setup again, unless you want to go back and change it. Back to the data entry tab. And now we have my client's entity's name, and there's some other information here which will go back, and that will be corrected as you enter more information. So since these are blank, let's see, client ID number, and you go back and it shows up as client ID number. If there's zeros here, that means there is blank selected in the table header converter, as these are shown in blanks here. For right now, we're going to go back to the HRE human resource header, select that, go to the data setup, scroll up, and now back to data entry, and those are my headers. So once you feel comfortable with the right headers, and you can change these at any time, you generally won't have to go back and set those again.
This setup section reviews the setup data selections.
Now we're going to look at the setup data tab, which we've used lightly before. We're going to focus on that and some of the selections. So simply select it. This is assuming you've selected the show tab setup and you have the multiple green tabs. Setup data, that's what you want to select. There's only two selections here. One is a title for what's going to be used in the instruction tab, and the other is for the header use. So right now it shows HRE Gary's Company ABC. Where is that used? The only location that's used right now is in the instruction tab. So I'm going to go down to the instruction tab, and you'll see it shows HRE Gary's Company ABC. If I want to change that, I go back to the setup data, HRE Gary's Big Company ABC, and you'll see it shows an example here of what's going to show up. Go to the instructions tab at the lower left, Gary's Big Company ABC. Back to the setup data tab. Again, the only selections here are the ones that come from the table header converter. There are some unused ones, so you can easily switch. If you do a save as for this entire file, and now you want to save it for doing some real estate tracking, you simply select real estate tracking, and in the headers, now you're tracking property and real estate. And when you do that, you're probably going to want to do a save as. So we're going to do a save as, and if we're tracking real estate, let's see, what was the name? The prefix on that was, okay, sorry, we're going to switch the header to real estate tracking, and we want to change it just so it shows up in our header. And now we'll do a file and a save as, RES. Instead of HRE, we're going to use RES. Real estate company, let's say you have multiple companies, company A, and we'll bump up the version number from 4 to 5. So most of these items are one-time set. Once you have your setup complete, which shouldn't take you very long, you're up and running, and you can start doing your data entry as normal.
This setup section reviews the quartiles for salary grades and salaries.
We're now going to be focused on the setup salary quartiles. The salary quartiles are used if you're using this. You could probably get creative and use it for many purposes, but generally it's used for tracking HR, the personnel that we showed before. So since we're now going to be tracking by HR, I'm going to change my setup to track by human resources. And once you set this for your tool, you got to stay with it unless you're going to use it for another purpose. Then you got to save it as a whole nother file name. So what we did was we changed it back to HRE, and we're going to look at the salary quartiles. And of course, using good configuration management, we've changed the whole purpose of this tool. And I'm going to save it as HRE. Gary's company, and we'll bump up the version. Okay, so what this tab is used for, it's used in the data entry tab for calculating values of what somebody perhaps could be making if they're a new candidate. I'm going to switch to the data entry tab, and I'm going to use the scroll button down at the right here and scroll to the right to this area here. This color, and I'm going to magnify this a little bit so you can see a little bit better. This color is indicating that it should not be edited. If you click on it, it's going to show some formula, but please don't change that. So now we're looking at salary posted. Let's say the job is posted at $110,000. So the quartiles are going to give you an estimate of where that person may be, or where you may want them to be within the range of what their salary grade is. So I'm going to scroll to the left here a little bit and find salary grade, or I can simply use the search tool. Here's salary grade. So I can select the salary grade of this person, which is predefined, and we'll show you how to change that as well. Let's say they're going to be SGO2. Select that, and we're going to scroll back, and it's going to show, based on that salary quartiles, what their hourly would be and their estimated annual income would be. And the hourly is based on 2080 hours. Now we'll see this shows 180, the midpoint. So I'm going to go back to the salary quartiles, which is what we're focusing on under setup. And we've selected for salary grade, let's go back, check it, make sure, SGO2. All right. So we're in the data entry tab now. We're going to switch to the salary quartiles and look for SEO2. Or was it SG? Let's confirm that. So you want to make sure you get this right. SGO2. Back to the quartiles. SGO2. So SGO2 shows up here. You've pre-entered these values, and the 180,000 comes out here, which is the average between these two values. Now you can set these values anything that you'd like. Let's say your range that you want it to be, instead of 175, you want to make it 170,000 to 185, and it'll adjust the numbers accordingly to the annual midpoint and it break it down to the hourly. Back to the data entry, and the numbers are all updated. So your salary quartiles probably only need to set up once, maybe annually you might want to adjust them. But based on the salary grades, where you might anticipate somebody coming in within range, and it'll calculate out the midpoint, and then you can go on from there to decide what your hiring numbers are going to be. These salary grade numbers come from another tab, which is called the Data Val tab. So we're looking at the salary quartiles. If I click on that, it's going to take me over to the Data Val tab. The Data Val tab stands for data validation. Has all of the master information for items that are selectable, and we'll show that later. But right now, it's taken us to the salary grade selections at the right here. I'm going to scroll a little bit over so you can see that better. Salary, and I'm going to enlarge this a little bit. And so salary grades, each one of these is editable, but once you set it, you probably don't want to change it. And so ESO2, there's some other numbers here, and you can even add to this list, and we're going to show later how to add to that list. But this is the master list. That master list shows up in the quartile section. Once you have this set up, you probably never need to see it again unless you want to update annually or quarterly according to your company's needs. But that's the information that's used in the salary quartiles that shows up in the data entry tab.
This data entry section reviews the data entry tab.
We're now moving into some of the details of the data entry tab. If you recall, the data entry tab will be your main point of entry for your information, and then you can view it on the dashboard or some of the other reports. So we are at the data entry tab now, and you'll see it's pre-populated again. Right now you can see at the top the current version we're looking at, and each of the rows represents, in this case, a person, and we're using this as a human resource tool. If you're using this as a client tool, you'll have different headers, but for right now, we're going to show this example as human resource tracking. These rows are rather wide, so you can narrow them down using the typical tools used for or methods on a spreadsheet, and you can see each person listed. You must have at least 3 entries in this tab. 3 entries are required, and then you could add more. So we indicated that you start at the left and work your way to the right. I'm going to use the lower right scrolling tool. I call it a tool, but it's a widget that you can use to scroll across. Now we're at the leftmost part of this screen, and there are multiple columns of information for each person. Each row represents a person. Each column has the header of information, and basically you work your way left to right in updating or creating a new row or a new person. Right now, since this is pre-populated, we want to add an additional person. So what you want to do is scroll to the bottom, and you'll see instructions here on how to insert a new person. You simply click on the number on the left here, which is right now 55, left of the gray row. You must select the entire row and it'll be highlighted, and then you can select insert. Each cell shows up as orange, indicating that it's blank or needs attention. So in this particular column, manager notes, I can type in this is my new person, and then you start entering the information. So if someone has the name of Smith or Jones or whatever your preference happens to be, let's say it's a Prescott, last name, I like to do last name and then first, Prescott John. And then you simply go across and you make all your entries. In this case, since we're using the HR, using this as an HR tracker, employee ID, this is usually provided by your HR department, 45-45-1, and you simply go across entering each one. Now you'll notice that there is a drop-down menu on the lower right here. If you happen to use this and select somebody that is already in this list, both of those items, because they're duplicates, will show up as orange, and then you'll see the error occur at the top. If we were to select that and type in 5, let's get off that, go back. Okay, you can use your mouse to go, or your keyboard to go back and forth. 555, that's already used, so we'll use 565, and now it goes white. So that indicates that there is no issue with this. If you happen to select a duplicate, again, it will go orange. In some cases, like on the under this column here of G for on staff, you can pre-select a name or area, a TBD, transfer it out. Let's say they're on staff and it goes white. Some columns allow duplicates. This column, which is employee ID, must be unique, and so when a duplicate, it goes orange. In this column of G for on staff applicant candidate, it will allow you to have duplicates and not go orange. The only time when this will go orange, I'm going to hit the delete button here, if it's blank or if there's a TBD. TBD will always go orange. Otherwise, we'll select on staff, and then if there is a personnel level type, you can scroll up and down. Let's say this is a staff position, security clearance, maybe it's TBD, maybe it doesn't even apply. So you can select NA, and you keep marching across. This row indicates the headers, and again, if the header is in green, such as column J, that indicates the text in green indicates that it is used in a report. And generally, if it's underlined, that's a hyperlink which will take you to an area where you can add additional information. So right now we're going to be looking at this, and I'll give you a quick preview of adding a different instance or selection. So right now we're in column J, which is rec status, and you'll see it's orange. We have not selected an item yet. You can select any one of these. If this was to be a job requisition, in these cases where it's NA, it's not a job rec, they're already on staff. But if you want to open up a job rec or something that's pending, you can simply select that option. But let's say your options are not in here. Usually some of these pre-canned selections you don't want to change, but maybe you want to add something special. What you want to do is select the cell on the header, one single click, and then you want to click it again on the job rec status link, and it's going to take us to the data val tab, which over here on the lower right where the mouse is. When I hit that link, it's going to take us to data val. When I'm in the data validation section for adding new information, and I click the link there, it will take me back to the data entry tab, which is the one we're in now. So if I was to hit job rec status, I'll click that once. Now I've already highlighted the cell, so now when I click it a second time, it'll take me there. And I want to know where I am in here, and here we are, job rec status. You can also tell by looking at the top left. Right here it says Q30. We're in column Q, cell 30, row 30, and these are the selections that are available from which we selected, right? So there's we're scrolled to the top. You want to make sure, looking at the far right, we're scrolled to the top. Some of these are rather lengthy, so you can scroll up and down, and we'll show that open has special highlighting, meaning that does not need to be changed. Do not change or delete that, but there's other options here. So if you want to add an option for rec status, simply double click the green, a new orange cell will open up, and then you can type in waiting for approval. This is not something you would normally do, but I'm just showing this as an example, waiting for approval. I'm going to go back to the job rec status in the data entry tab by selecting the link, and back to the job rec status. I believe that's where we were, and on this new person, now waiting for approval shows up, and I can zoom in on that a little bit. See the waiting approval. But since that is not a normal option under rec status, we'll go back and get rid of that. The way you get rid of this is making sure that it's at the bottommost point at this in the selection list. You can now either double click the red, or you can simply select the cell, hit delete, goes orange, make sure it's at the bottom. You can do that by sorting A to Z and double click the red. And now it's gone. And now I'm going to select job rec status. Remember, we're in the data val tab. Select job rec status, and it takes us back to the data entry tab. Now as I scroll across here, you can see this now is turned red. Red indicates that either a manual entry override has been entered where some cells, some columns allow you to do a manual entry, which will override the selection. In this case, it also means that the selection that was previously made here was deleted off the master list in the data validation tab. So you can reselect that and select one that's more appropriate. And so this is a job rec, and let's say it's open. And then you simply continue across selecting or entering your data. Duplicate rec. Sometimes a requisition is for a resource is sent out to a subcontractor as well as being internal. If this is a duplicate, meaning one has been sent out to a sub, you could select yes. In this case, this is the primary one. Now, if we were to say this is also sent out to a subcontract company, I could enter in a new value and repeat all the information here. I could say Prescott, John, and it'll turn orange because it's a duplicate. And now I want to edit this, and there's different ways. If you find this circling icon that goes circular here and you don't want to select, you can either select blank and retype it, or you can go to the top and select up here to edit. And let's say this would be sub. And now when we go back over, let's say we reselect all this information, 565, which really, it's probably going to be another one, 565-S for sub. You got to be a little creative here, and we'll talk about more creativity. They're actually not on staff yet. So you may want to have NA because they're not on staff. They are a candidate. So, or could be a potential candidate, maybe, and they're not a candidate yet. Because there's, if this John applied, which actually probably would be another name because John would not originally be on staff, but you got to be creative, and you can say inactive client. No, he applied, and in this case, it would be a duplicate. So now you have two recs open with a similar. Now, since they're not an employee yet, this would actually be NA. And so we could simply type in NA, and down here you could do NA again. And it shows up as a duplicate, and that's okay because we know we're waiting for that person to get on staff. And let's say this one also is a NA, or it could be an applicant as well. And it's going to be a staff position. You can select the same information, and you keep marching across here, across each of these columns. Now I'm going to zoom back out because we only have so much room on the screen. And each one of these, you want to make your selections. Now at the top here, you'll see some of these columns have gone yellow, and it'll say one error found, and there's information here. Click on cell above, then select error with drop down, click here for help. So select it above, select the drop down, and the error is duplicate, and it'll show this duplicate data, and that's indicated by the two orange cells here. If you want more information on that, you can click this link, and that'll take you to the error lookup data. And now what has happened here, this cell has become active, and I'm going to move my mouse, or the using the keyboard to move it around. That indicates what the error is, and if you scroll to the right, there's some information about what the issues is or are, and some information on how to help resolve it. And then there's a link here to go back to the data entry tab, and it takes us right back. So as you go across, you simply enter in all your information. I'm going to scroll up a little bit to where we're already pre-populated. We see a red indication here. That was a leftover from some other selection, but now it's different. And name of person being replaced, that's not a replacement. So we can simply select the appropriate item or simply leave it blank. And sometimes orange is okay. It's not necessarily a severe error. It just says there's no information there. And I'm going to scroll further across. Here's another indication of an error. It says Joe Anderson. Either Joe is not in the list anymore. There's some problem with that. And Joe is no longer in that list. So I can select another name and it'll go white. And as I scroll down, you see how there's still an error in that column. That's because there's 2 blanks. 2 blanks will show as an error. Click at the top to see what the error is, missing data. And again, that's shown here. So we're going to maybe fill this in with some information. Maybe it's not a real error. And then the top will go blank. And you keep marching across. So what you really want to do is focus on one row, one person as you go across and enter in the information. I've highlighted this row by selecting the leftmost number in this spreadsheet. And I'm going to go across and I've pre-selected every one of these items. Every one of these items, barring just a couple, you can add to the information. So let's say the specific detail of assignment. And Sam West, we're on the Sam West column, and he's working on embedded chips. But let's say he's working on something else. We can scroll up and down, and I don't see our need here. So what we can do is, Joe is working on, let's say, some wiring. He's come in maybe as a subcontractor, been with the company for a while, as a subcontractor, as an electrician, and the specific detail, he specializes in wiring. So we're going to select specific detail of assignment, and we can look, we're in BA30. BA is on the right. I'm going to use the scroll bar to get us left a little bit. Let's see, BA, there we go. And wiring, there's cable harnesses, but there's no wiring specialty. So I'm going to double click the green, add in wiring. And now when I go back, I'm going to hit the specific detail assignment to go back. That should take us to the data entry tab. And let's see, was it Sam we were on? Hardware engineering, specific details. And we scroll down and there is wiring. So that's how you update the selections that are available, and you keep going across. Again, if you need to update these, remember those titles that are in green are used in reports. So some of that information you don't want to delete or change. And I'm going to select the location of work. And on the right here is location of work. And I'm going to move that to the right just a little bit. Okay, left. Location of work. These colors are indicating do not edit, do not change, because they're used in reports. And there's an indicator at the top left here. It says no edit cell patterns, no edit. So do not change or edit that text at all. That's because they're used in specific other reports and they are keywords. So we're going to go back to location, back to the data entry tab. As you go across, some information may not be needed. You can simply leave it blank. That'll keep it as orange. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just says that's blank or TBD. And then there's some specific data. Again, remember, in this color, these are no edit colors. You've noticed that, may notice here, salary grade not found. That's because we added a couple rows and the salary grade was not defined. So I can scroll left to the salary grade, and here we go. I can enter in the salary grade, and if it's not existing, I can add it later. Scroll back to the right, and you'll see that those red cells went away with actual numbers. And let's say we posted that job as 65,000. Let's say as a contractor, maybe it's 70,000. And again, here it shows some recommended numbers. These numbers are not required to use because as you scroll to the right here, salary, employer, actual offered to candidate, they were offered 78,000. Sorry, let's get rid of some of this stuff and say 80,000 respectively. Okay, and you keep marching across, and you'll see a bunch of orange cells here, which means they're blank. I'm going to scroll up just a little bit to see some pre-popular or HR use. And HR tends to want to track the dates, so you can simply enter in the date. If it's 10/21/1988, then it'll go white, indicating that you've entered the data, and use these as appropriate. Again, you can change these titles, headers, as to your particular needs. Recommend to hire. Again, this is for HR use for candidate. Each one of these has a very specific need, and you can create your own reports. If the header is not in green and is not showing up in a report, you can create your own report, and we're going to show that later. So you keep marching across. Eventually, we'll get over to some PII. So it's personal identifiable information. This is probably closely held information. In this case, it happens to be the person's address, the city, state, and of course, many of these are selectable, such as the city. You can select which city they reside in. Let's say it's Dallas, and keep going across. To the left of this, which I didn't hit, is the company information or work location of an individual. So there is a work location for this person, and here it is. So location of work, let's say there's multiple companies that you're working with, or you have multiple sites within your prime company. You can simply select where they're working, what state and area. To the right, the PII is personal information. Kind of moving quickly here. And then there's information that also has to do with screening and health, and if there's housing available. Some OCONA sites require that. And then there's the finishing off the address for the person, where they live, phone number, social security number, and whatnot. And you don't have to add. If you don't want to track these things and you don't think it's appropriate, simply don't include it. And then scrolling further to the right for some statistics, there's male, female, and dates of hire and whatnot. The email is somewhat important if you want to use this as an email tool. You notice this is in green, the primary email. So you enter in the email, which you can send out emails using the email feature of this tool. And then there's a secondary email, which is not used in the tool, but you still have it recorded, date of birth, and so forth. So one of the other interesting features is the separation date in this case, as well as the start date. So here we have the actual start date and then the separation date. This will give you information on how long people are in, what the attrition rate is. This all shows up in reports and statistics. So a lot of this information is important to use, but we're going to show a little bit later on how to get creative in using some of these. I'm going to scroll back to the left, and that is the basic gist of using this tool. So in this particular case, you see these two NAs. That's why you're getting an error here. And you can select with the duplicate data, NA. If these were not NAs and this was a different value, then that error would go away. So now we're going to take a look at the results.
This data entry section reviews the data entry results.
There are several ways to look at your results. One is using an ad hoc report, which we'll show later. The other two are the dashboard view and the reports. Previously, we used the setup tabs in another section of this video. If we want to hide those tabs just to clean this up a little bit, we'll select that. Now we're looking at either the dashboard view, and my mouse is at the lower left, or the reports tab. Most of the reports show up in the dashboard view. So I'm going to select the dashboard view, and we can see our results. All of these numbers and information comes from what you've entered into the data entry tab for your individual people. If you're tracking automobiles, vehicles, clients, you're going to see some different numbers based on what you've entered. This vertical line here indicates the view has been locked. So if I use the bottom scroll bar and I scroll back and forth, it's going to scroll under that line just like the horizontal line here, and if I scroll up and down. If you don't like that, you can get rid of it by going to View, going to Freeze Panes and Unfreeze Panes, and then the line goes away. This is good if you want to modify, do a screenshot. I'm going to go back and undo that because I want to keep that locked. And we'll go back to the dashboard view. And I guess it's not going to let us do this, so we'll go forward. There's a little nuances here to what's going on. We're in the dashboard view, and let's say we're going to lock it at, well, we can lock it anywhere. We can lock it, let's say here. So as we scroll, go back to freeze panes. This is not the original setting, but we reset it. That's okay. So the results of what you've entered. Each of these numbers, cumulative, the statistics and whatnot, everything is based on your information that you've entered. Good data in, good data out. In this particular case, we have a start date by month. If you made the appropriate entries, you can tell what the average or the actual start date was for most of your people. In this case, May and July seems to be common start date by people. Departure date, May seems to be a common departure date. And as you scroll down, you can see the titles and the reports, and the information has the numbers and the categories. And most of this is customizable. So what you see is not what you're actually going to get after you customize it. And once you customize it, you don't need to change it again. It's like the setup. Once you first set it up, and you're good to go. And you scroll down here, and so all of this information that we're seeing in these different charts or graphs is based on the data that you've entered. So there's a lot of information here, and all of this information can be used for reports. So or presentations. So if you want to copy one of these graphs, charts, you simply highlight it, make sure you got the outside highlighted. You simply do a copy, and then if you had a PowerPoint presentation, you could open that up and insert it and manipulate it further there. That's the dashboard view. If you want to see some more of the details behind it, you click on the Show Reports, and the title changes to Hide Reports because that's a toggle tab. You'll see the data chart behind the results, the actual numbers, and these are not to be edited. If you try to edit them again, you'll see an error. And to the right, on most of these charts, again, you can either copy the chart and put it into a report. You can also actually edit the chart by selecting the data, and you'll see to the right there is some menu options that show up. You can actually filter out some of the data. This is an advanced user thing. I don't recommend using that unless you absolutely have to, and we can show that in another area, another section. So right now, these are the results that we've seen, and these are the results that you can achieve by customizing and making your various entries. Moving over to some of the other report tabs. Again, these reports take in information from the data entry tab where you entered all of your information. This is just kind of parroting back in a different format in order to make these graphs and charts that go into the dashboard.
This customization section reviews the data entry headers.
As we look to customize this tool, customization, there are multiple areas, and we're going to start out with the data entry headers. A lot of this customization you may have seen before if you've watched some of the earlier segments or topics. We're going to switch over to the data entry tab and show how you can customize your headers. Again, this has been shown before, but we're going to show a little bit more again. And something that I may not have shown before we get into customizing is as you enter data into the data entry tab, it's a good idea to keep all of your entries and not delete them because it shows good history, especially since some of that history shows up on some of the charts and graphs. However, if there is a particular need where you absolutely want to or need to delete some of the entries, the way to delete them is, again, select on the very left side where these the row number is. Now this is a one selection deletion. If I wanted to delete these three, I could simply select that and hit delete, and they would go away. And there's an example, and now they're gone. And you can see at the top we now have 19 visible entries in the selection. Some of these selections, when you delete, you may not be able to hit the go back button or undo, so we'll just live with what we have. So we're looking at how to customize the data entry headers. We're in the data entry tab, as you can see at the bottom here. The blue section at the top shows the headers, and how to update those is to go to the setup area. Now I'm going to minimize the reports where we were looking at earlier. I'm going to show setup tabs, and you can see the green tabs illuminate. They appear in the data header tab. Again, you should probably look at some of the previous topics where we've shown how to update this, but we'll show it again here. The items in green are editable, the light green color, and the main header topic is in this column, column D, which is highlighted here. If the color is in white, it's not editable, but you can edit some of these other pre-canned titles, or if you scroll down, you can add your own title like we showed before for client entries, or in this case, client entities. And let's say we want to, in our main client tracker, we want to change something. So again, you simply highlight the cell, you type in your title that you want, my notes. In this case, I like manager notes, but maybe your leader or just a general user, or maybe you want to change this to HR notes. And you keep going across, changing title by title. These are headers that are going to show up when you select CLI. Right now, this current tool has HRE as selected, but if you want to track clients, then you can change the title, client name, and you keep going across and you edit each one to change what you want. To get those to show up in the data entry tab, and this has been shown before, but we'll do it again. After you've edited your headers, we've just edited the client tracking area. You go to setup and you select, there's indications here that says what you're selecting. You select client tracking, see how it changes. Go to your data entry tab, and now you have all the new headers based on your selections that you made. And once you do this, you probably only have to do it once. If you want to go back and change it again, the best thing is to use meaningful names that represents the data under those columns. And as always in the headers, if it shows up in green, this green text color, whether it's underlined or not, it means it's being used in a report somewhere. If it's underscored, see how this is underlined, that means it's a hyperlink to, you can update the selections that are available that you can select here. But that's, if you go into this mode, you simply hit the escape button and then you can go back. So those are the basic data entry for the headers. Again, if you click the links, that will allow you to change the selectable data. But if you want to change the headers, you go to the setup tabs, go under table header converter, and right now we're selected as client, and client, we can change this to big name. And then again, when you go back to your data entry tab on the left, you'll see client big name shows up.
This customization section reviews the data entry selection values and options.
To change the selections that are available in the data entry tab, you'll notice that again the header is across the top here, and if there's a link, which means it's actually a hyperlink, it means it's also underscored, underlined. That means you can change the values that are selectable in these drop-down menus. So as you go across here, you may see a drop-down menu. Each one of these you can define and customize. So let's take a look at some of the customization, but before we do that, I want to point out, you'll notice I'm using the lower right on the far right corner. I'm moving the selection tab around. If you move it to a certain place and you find that there is no selection tab that pops up, simply scroll to the left a little bit and then the tab will pop up. Some of these you actually have to move around. You have to play around with a little bit, but you'll see what happens. So let's say you have executive, we're in big client name. I'm going to actually switch back to the human resource setup to show a better example of this. So I go back to setup. I'm going to scroll up to say the human resource headers. And if I want, I can select hide all those tabs. Now they're hidden. Go back to the data entry. And now again, I have all of my appropriate HRE headers that I selected based on my previously defined headers. But now I want to change some values that are selectable. So in this particular case, personnel level type, there's some predefined values, manager, leader, CEO, etc. on staff. I want to add something. I want to add something very particular to my use. Maybe it's particular to your use. Highlight the cell, click it again, and now we're off to 030, as we can see in the top left here, 030. So we look 030, personnel level type. Now we want to add something unique here, and let's say it's executive assistant. Executive assistant doesn't show up here. For some reason we want to add that. So you follow the instructions here to add a new item, double click. You get the orange cell, select the cell and enter executive assistant, or in this case I might just want to add assistant, exec assistant. Now that that's been added, I can go back, select the personnel level type, which will take me back to the data entry tab. Remember, right now we're on the data val tab. Data val tab is where you set all of your selections for what you're using in the data entry tab. Hit the link here and it'll take you back, personnel level type. Now on any one of these, I can select, scroll down, and there's the exec assistant showing up. Now each one of these may or may not show up in a report, but the ones that are in green do show up in a report, and that's how you change the values in the data selection under data entry. And there's a few other notes here on errors which we'll show shortly.
This customization section reviews the report's tables and charts.
The customization of tables and charts requires you to go to the bottom area and select the tab Show Reports. If If you select it once, if you're not already there, it highlights it, select it again, and it expands it out. So right now we're in Report 1, O Staffing. We're going to show in the next section how to change the titles, but right now we're going to show how to change and adjust these reports. So you'll notice at the lower right, it shows the version of the file that you're using, and the lower left of this chart shows the actual report title. There's an option on the upper left which says Add File Version. That Add File Version relates to the lower right file version that shows up on this chart. If for some reason you don't want that to show up, you simply highlight it and select No. And if you look on the lower right, that value goes away. If you want it to come back, you select Yes. This is a minor detail, but if you're using these in reports, it's good to show good configuration management, where the report came from, what version of this tool, because each time you save it and you update it, it's going to go to the next version. So if you show multiple charts or graphs in a report, perhaps it could be a PowerPoint report or presentation, it's good to have the same like data, and so you want to use the data from the same report or the same tool version. Additionally, there are ways to change the reports. I'm going to scroll to the right using the lower right tool on this spreadsheet, and if you single click on the data and then click it once again, you'll see some of these that show up. You can actually change some of the titles in the report, some of the names. Let's go back a little bit. You can change some of the styling, and most importantly, the filter. If, for instance, you don't want the TBD or reserve to show up, or NA, you can scroll down and select to uninclude those particular items. I'll select NA and TBD, hit apply, and now those go away. We still have reserved, which is a reserved spot specifically for the tool. Apply, and now you have a version that shows some of the redacted data that you may want to use. In general, I would keep these all completely selected unless there's a particular need to not use those, because as the tool progresses and you enter data, everything is updated live, and so the data that appears on the left here comes from the data entry tab and is specifically related to, on the left here, items or titles that appear in the data validation tab, as well as the data entry tab. So you can also change some of the coloring here. I don't recommend that, but it is customizable. You can change the chart type. I don't recommend that, but if you want to, you can. But again, because you've used good configuration management and saving your files, it will show up and you can save that. And something in note, which we'll show later, but a preview, is the information that shows up in the lower right, which we showed the option to say add file version, yes or no. If the file saved, I'm going to go back to the total upper left here. See where it says TVER 19LR06? That's the same number that shows up down here. If you save the file without using that, that information will not show up in your report. It'll show up as general use. So I recommend keeping that version. I'm going to show you real quick what that looks like if you change it as something else. So I'm going to do a save as, and then I'm going to change this to get rid of all of that information, and you just have a single file with no version. Hit save. And now the save column, let's see, we'll do a refresh, and you'll see that it shows general use. And that's not what you want. You don't want to see that. So I would keep that version number as you go through the reports.
This customization section reviews the reports showing how to change the chart titles.
Now, as we look at charts, we're going to look at how to change the chart titles. As you may have seen in the dashboard view, we'll go back there, you see these titles that indicate the information that's contained within those charts. But how do we change those titles? The way to do that is to go to Show Report Tabs. That will reveal all of the reports. And each one of these has a very similar title, changeable area. And we're going to look at this area on the upper right. And I'm going to increase that view and scroll it over so we can see the effect. There's a default header which appears on the chart, and that's reflected in the chart itself. Then there's an optional header, which is basically a recommendation if you want to choose it. And then you can enter in your own header. So right now, the custom header that somebody entered is Report 01 on staff by status. Let's say we want to change it to say my, or let's say company big A on staff by status. And then here you want to select the header to actually use. Above here you just entered in some text. Now you want to select which of these you want to use for the actual report header. You notice right now it's showing as Report 01 staffing, and we're going to change that to select what you've entered, and now it changes to Report Company Big A on staff by status. Each report has that selection, and if you go back to the dashboard view, and we're going to select that, and now you may see where Report 1 Company Big A on staff by status. So a lot of this is interconnected. We're going to go back to Report 01 where we just were, but if you go across to Report 02 on the lower bottom, you could do the same thing. You select which option you want. Right now it's on staff by HR title. Let's say we want to do, if we were checking clients, select clients, and that again will replicate in the dashboard. And that goes across for all the other reports. So that is how you update the report headers to show up in your dashboard, or as use if you want to copy and paste to go into a report or presentation.
This customization section reviews how to display or remove the file version in the charts.
Now we're going to show the file version that appears in these charts. And we've shown this once before in a previous area. If you look on a particular report, we're in Report 01. We can skip up to 3. And I'm going to use a scroll bar to go across. And you'll see I'm going to enlarge this so you can see it. Let's see. Here we go. In this particular table, which I've enlarged, it shows the file version from which this chart is taken. And this is the same name as the file version that we're using. If I was to do a save as and go to revision 7, now it's at 6, I'm going to do a save as, change the file version, which is good configuration management. And now you'll see in the lower right it shows revision 7. So each time you do some major updates, you want to always increase that number. You don't want to get rid of the numbers, the TVer number. You just want to update that rev number, and that's going to show up at the lower right of your charts and tables. And again, the selection on the upper left where the Y is, add file version, that means add it to the chart, which is on the lower right. Right now it's yes, which means it's appearing. If you select no, it'll remove that. Some people don't like that. That's okay. I think it's good to have showing your file versions, and this also works in the dashboard view, which we'll show in a short bit.
This customization section reviews Report 7 and how to make manual entries.
Moving on to Report 7, which is a special report. I'm going to select along the bottom tab area to Report 7. And we're still enlarged. I can zoom in on this a little bit. but for right now I still want to show, as previously shown on the top left, is basic information, your selection if you want to display the version. But now this is a special report. Why? Because it requires manual entry as to tracking over time. And what it tracks over time is your staffing. So there's 3 different areas that we're tracking here: on staff or active count, potential candidates, and attrition. Attrition is the people that have departed from your company. The reason why this is a manual entry is because it's not a one-time shot look in time. It's a look at the data over a period of time. So right now we have we're starting in 2022. The various months that go across, and as you march across this in time, you can physically enter the numbers that are applicable. So the green areas are editable. If I was to highlight the green area here, I could hit delete and it would take away from the graph. I'm going to do a quick undo and it puts it back. Let's say we're in June and we have on staff 25 people. You'll see it keeps adding, and we'll have candidates that have applied. Let's say there's 5 and 2 people have left. So as I enter data in the top green area, it updates the lower area, and of course you see the key here that indicates where the numbers are. It's important that if you use this, you should enter it each month, so that if you go by 3 months, it's hard to think back, well, what were the numbers at that time? So at the month end, you'll see it says month end. You want to go ahead and update those numbers. And as many as the other graphs or charts, this also should appear in the dashboard. And if you use the lower left tool within the spreadsheet, you can select to scroll left to dashboard view. You select dashboard view and you can scroll down and see where that chart appears, and here's the same chart with the numbers over a period of time.
This customization section reviews Report 9 and how to select the options.
We've switched over to Report 9 for customization, and this is a rather complex chart, and I'm going to scroll to the right to show you what it looks like. This is a report, and this is a report on attrition. There's actually 3 charts in there: the main attrition report, and then start and end dates, where people have started and ended their time with your company. All of this data is, again, it comes from the data entry tab, and if you've used the start dates and end dates, this is where this information comes in useful, as well as some other information. On this particular chart, you still have the add or no show of the file version. There's still the alert and statistics, but there's some additional information here. You can also still add your header and select your header, what you want to change to make it adjust for your particular viewing. The new selections on this particular report are if you want to display it by calendar year or by fiscal year. And I'm going to have to zoom in here quite a bit to show you what this looks like. So I'm sorry for moving the screen around. You'll see it says calendar, and now you can select between fiscal and calendar year. I'm going to select by calendar year, which will go from the beginning of the year, and you're still going to have to select the start month. So we're going to start in the calendar year is in January, and the year for the report, we can select a range of dates on the report. I believe there's a 50-year range. We're going to select right now from 2000 to 2025, and now I'm going to scroll across. There's some additional chart information up here, but the key thing is here we want to look at the table or the chart. So I'm going to minimize this a little bit more and then scroll so you can see the chart, and I'm going to have to unfreeze these frames to show what I want to show you. So unfreeze. I don't recommend doing that because it messes up a view and you may not be able to see it. So here we are. So what this shows is you can see the key on the bottom, the attrition rate. So your total on staff is in the top green, and then it has various numbers that were on staff but departed, when they arrived, when they left, and it charts out all the information. Now you see a lot of white space on the right side here. Right now we're charting through year 2000 through 2025. If I was to go back and change, let's say we want to chart out through, instead of to 2025, we only want to chart out through let's see, when did that start? 2000. Let's see, we want to go to 2022. Select that, and now scroll back to the chart, and you'll see it goes out to 2022. Now if we were to select the entire range, whether we do or not, you're still going to see a lot of this white space. To make it more pleasantly viewable, perhaps, there's some instructions on the right here which show how to correct that. Basically, you want to select this till this filter shows up. You select the filter, and now you can scroll down, and it has all the years that are displayed, and we've selected up to 2022, but we want to unselect the rest of these. So you can either unselect them one by one, or you can go to the top and say deselect all and only select the years that you want to include. There's multiple ways to do this. So I'm going to quickly go through this and reselect only the years of information that I want to show. It's best to show years consecutively. Probably don't want to skip years because it may look make the data look a little funny. Hit apply when you're done, and now you see it spreads it across the entire screen. It's a little more visually pleasing. Either way, you're going to get the same correct data, and this will show up again in the dashboard report. So these are just some of the ways that you can customize your reports. Again, the header for this primary report, scroll up and to the left, and here we have far left here. Here's the title. You can change duration over years. That's the title you'd like to use, and then here you're going to select the title you're actually going to use, selection duration over years, and then if you scroll back, you'll see duration over years as shown. The other charts are pre-canned, they're not changeable right now, but it'll show the data, and all of this shows up on the dashboard chart as needed, and you can go there and review that.
This customization section reviews the dashboard and selectable options.
For customizing the dashboard, there are a few selections which are available, but some are not very obvious. The most obvious one is, again, the add file version on the top left, and you'll see the drop down yes, no, and in the charts below you'll see each chart or graph has that file version. If there's some reason where you don't want to show that, you simply select no, and they all go away, as you can see here. I'm going to put them back on because I think it's important to show continuity and making sure that when you do a presentation, the version of a file that has data correlates with a chart for the same data. Now as you scroll down, there are few other selections other than you can actually select it, and you may have the same selections on the side. I don't recommend changing those. Those are changeable in the Reports tab. Generally, if you want to do a copy of this, you can do a copy paste into, again, a presentation. You can enlarge it. Each of these is rescalable. You can change it. I'm going to put that back. There's other options. You can change the colors and whatnot. One thing is, if you do a screenshot, I recommend doing a screenshot from the actual one of the report tabs as opposed to the dashboard, or because of this black line which shows the screen frozen line as I scroll back and forth, you can get rid of that by again going to view, and select freeze panes and unfreeze. I don't like to do that because then it changes the format of what I'm seeing. But if I do select this chart and do a copy, and then I can go somewhere else and paste it. Normally I would go to a presentation where I want to paste it, and then you can manipulate it there for the size and scaling that you want to do.
This customization section reviews how to create ad hoc reports.
There may be a reason why you want to create an ad hoc report. There are two ways to do this. One, you can simply scroll to the right. We're going to get rid of this, all the reports, and we're going to look at the user tabs. You can create your ad hoc report somewhere here in the user tabs. There's multiple tabs here you can predefine. You can add data reference just like a normal spreadsheet. But what I find is most useful, going back to the data entry tab, and I'm going to scroll here and we'll see some of the data. Let's see, we're going to switch screens here for just a moment. And we're back to the data entry tab that is fully populated, and you'll see the again, the numbers across in this row is the count of the visible items in the rows below. So right now, across the board, the 2020 one over here we show is 5. That means the remainder of the difference between 5 and 20, which is 15, there is 15 rows that are empty or do not have data. So if we want to create a special report, and you'll see, let's do one on staff, and we see there's some candidates, some resigned, transferred out. Let's say we only want to show those on staff. This gray row at the top with the drop down menu items is what we're going to be using for this. So you select what you want to view, you select the drop down and say I want to see nothing except for on staff active, and we'll show what the blanks are. And now we've just created a report of only those that are on staff, and it shows that we have 17. If I want to change this and say, well, how many people have get rid of everything, how many people have resigned, and this will include everyone in the list, so we only have 1. And so you can alter this report to show how many candidates and transferred out, and now it'll show 2. There's 1 candidate, 1 transferred out. You can further reduce this by keep selecting different values. For instance, let me undo this and we'll reselect all. And now we have, we want to select by on staff and who's in a staff position. So we go back to the filter, we deselect everything and select only on staff, hit OK, go to the next filter and say of those who are here, how many people are managers. And now we've reduced this to the chart. The table here now only shows those who are on staff are active and those who are only managers. And now you can use this, you can copy paste whatever you choose to do, put it in a report and send it off, or keep it just as point of information. Just make sure you correlate it with the version of the file that you're using and the date. And to undo all of that, you just select all at the top. And if you go across and you're wondering why isn't something being seen correctly, I think I'm missing data, you find the one that has the filter and select all. So that's a good way where if you want to narrow down and the certain reports, same thing across the board here. If you want to see all the people who are working on big company A, you go to this row and say, hey, show me only those working on big company A. But you see some have transferred out. You want to see only the active ones. There's a candidate, you don't want to see those. So you can filter those out and say only show on staff of those. And now you've just created an ad hoc report that shows just the detailed information you want, and you can continue that all the way down the line and eliminate and get the specific data you want. And then when you're done, simply go back and unselect all of those filters. If you're not sure what column is filtered, look for that filter icon, select that, and select all, and then now you're showing all of the data again.
This customization section reviews the user tabs.
We're going to switch to the user tabs and how to customize that. You'll see the hide user tab. That's because they're already shown. If you want to hide those, select the hide user tab. And now there's only one tab. Reselect it again to open them back up. And as mentioned in several other topics, these are the tabs that you can use to enter in your own data. So if you want to have a special My Report, and let's say you selected some data from the data entry, whatever it may happen to be, and then you want to go back to your user defined report. Let's see where, there we go. And then you can simply do a paste, however you want to do. If you can do a special paste, you can also do like just a simple screenshot, the visual, whatever you want to do. And then you can adjust it as needed. This is fully editable as needed. You want to reset the background. But these are these user tabs. One for general use, the user-free text mode, one for reports, and other for notes that I've added previously. And now we're going to go ahead and hide those notes because we don't need to see those anymore. And that's how you use and customize the user edit tabs.
This alert section reviews alerts in the Data Entry tab.
In the Data Entry tab, there are multiple alerts that may show up as well as in other tabs. I'm going to hit this ever so briefly because I did cover some of it earlier. Each row, as each cell is populated, should turn white, except for if there's an error or to the right where it's a no edit cell. So the alerts that show up, you'll see at the top here, this is white as well. It says no errors and no errors to select. If there was a cell that was blank, I'll just delete this. You'll see that it turns orange. Orange represents either a blank cell or usually if there's a TBD selected. And then you'll notice at the top it turns yellow where it shows one error is found. And I'm going to enlarge this a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. And now it shows that one error. And according to the instructions here, there's two steps you can take. You select the cell and then select the error. There is a non-error, you can disregard that. There's an error of missing data. And now this link will take you to an explanation of that error. Or once you get used to it, you just simply know that this is a blank and it needs to be selected. So if I reselect it to on staff, the error goes away and it turns white. Also, if it's TBD, it goes orange to indicate that it needs some data. There are some cases where a cell may turn red, such as in here. There could be a couple of reasons. Either one, a manual entry was made just to alert you that it did not come from a selection because it may affect some reports that you make later on. Or it could be that it's not in the selectable list. Either the origination of that selection was deleted, such as in this case, it's coming from the personnel list, or in other cases, such as in this column, if one of these was to be deleted in the data validation tab, but it was previously selected, it too will turn red. That applies to most of the cells going across. So I'm going to shrink this back down a little bit, and so we can see this other one, Joe Anderson. He's no longer actually in the list. So I can simply select it and reselect the appropriate one. Let's say it's Joe's executive group. The links that appear if there's an error takes you to another tab, which is the error checksums tab. And I'll show that in a little bit, but let me scoot across here a little bit more, such as in the email list. Again, I showed this earlier, But if the list is too long due to a limitation of Excel, this will turn red and it'll give you some instructions on how to correct it. Alternatively, if you want to have everyone in the list to be emailed to, you can simply click this button here and it will update this group of emails. Normally, if you select an email, a single email, it'll automatically open up your email list and populate it with the address, the subject, and the text that you entered. And then you can attach files or edit this in any way you think is necessary. This is my email, and if you hit send, it'll send it back out. So we're not going to use that at the moment. If there were a smaller list here, again, due to the limitations of Excel, it can't do the full manual list. But if you wanted to select the entire group, you could copy that, and then you can open up your email application, hit start to write, and then simply paste it in. And now you have all the names listed that were applicable that you provided during the entry period. The other way to send out as a group, again, if there's a smaller list, I'll reduce this full list to say 3 or 4 people, and you'll see the list was shortened. This alert shows that there are 17 items that were filtered out, so it's only going to include the ones that are in this section here. Anything below the bottom line, there may be extra text that does not apply. And now this button becomes active, send email to selected group. Just click that, and again, it'll open up your email application, and then this time it puts everyone in the BCC area. You can remove that and put it into the to list, or add someone to the to list. Some of the other alerts that may appear, there are some of these areas at the top of reports, such as, we'll take a look at this one. Some of these will change color and give you some numbers and alerts that show up. That's if there's an error somewhere else in the file, such as if one of these selections was changed in the data val. The data val shows which items not to change, so you don't get the alert. And so if you accidentally do, it'll show up in this section down here, and it'll also show up here. And this happens to show some of the statistics for what you're looking at, how many are visible, counts, and so forth. And most of the reports have that type of error.
This alert section reviews the information in the Error tab.
The Error tab can be accessed 2 different ways. You can simply go to the bottom of the spreadsheet and navigate over to the right and select that tab. Or if you're in the Data Entry tab, again, if one of these errors becomes a link, such as if I was to delete this on-staff person, the error would show up. There could be 2 errors. And notice when I hit this, activate this cell, there's no drop-down selection. That's because we have to scroll to the left, because that is bordering on where the screen is frozen. And if you'll see as I move the slider around, and I'll zoom in on that a little bit more so you can see it. So everything from this column to the left is frozen. So as you scroll to the right, you don't lose that data, but you have to scroll all the way to the left, and then you get that drop down button. And there's some instructions or indicators that pop up if you hover your mouse. In this case, I'm going to select, there's only 1 error. There could be 2 errors. Right now there's only 1. Some of these where no duplicates are allowed, it might show up as 2 errors. So you select the error, and then you click the link, and it takes you to the error checksum tab. Now, it may be difficult to see, but you can tell where the active cell ended up. If you look at the top left, it says G11, column G, row 11, and you can also tell by moving the arrows on your keyboard. And it has the error title, a description of the issue, and some corrective action that you can take. And then you can select the link to go back to the tab where you came from.
This miscellaneous section reviews the creative use of the tracker tool.
In this miscellaneous section, we're going to be looking at the creative use of the tool. And generally that means use descriptive headers and names for your reports. Earlier we showed in the setup tabs the headers that you could possibly use to select. You can create your own. And it's always good to use very creative names, as well as if you try to use those creative names and meanings under the headings that have a Y, meaning it's going to show up in a report, it'll help get better information out of the tool, not just in tables that show up in the report tabs, but also in the dashboard view. That's probably the most important thing. Again, these headers are editable also, the title of the header, as well as the individual headers that you could edit, such as in this row for clients. And these headers again will show up in your data entry tab, and those are selected in the setup data tab. You also want to have probably a good indicator of the name or use of the tool, and then of course whatever you typed in you can now select, and that will show up in the instructions. Now the headers, it's a lot easier to understand what you're selecting if you have a meaningful header title, and then also the selections that are available should be very meaningful. So in this case, a person that is on staff or an applicant. I also have an applicant selection, candidate, and a few other options here that make fairly good use. You don't want to have too many selections because then it becomes confusing as to the meaning. A good descriptive short phrase for what you want to select is very useful. So as you go through, same thing in the reports. We'll open up reports again. If you're going to name the report, I'll slide to the left here so you can see the name. You want to have a good descriptive name. As indicated when we went through the report section, there's some pre-canned options that you can select and then enter your own. So it's good to be as specific as you can, but keep it short and meaningful.
This miscellaneous section reviews helpful tips for using the tracker tool.
Here are a few tips that may be useful to you. One of them is simply navigating around this spreadsheet itself. The top areas as you go across the items listed downwards are columns. You want to speak the right spreadsheet language going across our rows. On the lower right, down here, there's a scale that you can use to manually select how large the screen is. So I can go minus, or I can go plus, or you can use your control and scroll key to change the view. Keep in mind that on most of these there are some frozen cells, so as I scroll across to see more of the picture, some of the important information that I want to make sure that I'm always looking at stays there. Alternatively, you can as you shrink down, you can see more of the picture, and then again you can select the item if you want to put it into a report. And as we showed previously, there are some other selections. I would be cautious about using some of these, and if you do use some of these, you probably want to put it back to where it was, so that the next time you open it up, you'll be seeing all of the data, not just items that were filtered out. So the scroll bars on the right move up and down, and on the bottom move it left and right. Generally, there should be no reason to use the top menu section that comes with this spreadsheet. One thing you can do is you can select show tabs only, and it'll give you more room to see on the screen. It eliminates some of that information at the top. This bar here you can be used for data entry, or you can see in some cases what the formula is that's used. I'm switching back to the data entry tab. So if I was to select a cell, you'll see part of the formula show up at the top. It can also be used for edit. Select a cell, and then if you click in there, this is only an editable cell that does not have an equation. You can manually enter, and I'll renumber that to 119, and it'll show that it has a duplicate. You can see the two cells that show up, and so I'll change that to some other value, and so that goes away. In the dashboard view, it's interesting that you can print it. Simply, it prints just like a regular spreadsheet. You go to File, Print, and then you can use your standard print options to shrink or grow it, change the columns to have it appear as you'd like to. Right now, it's already set to be paginated correctly, and then of course you have these other options to remove information if you don't want that to show in your presentation or printout. In the Data Entry tab, if you have two people by the same name, you can fix that by adding a suffix or a number. So if you have Al Jones, let's say this person was, let's go to edit mode here, up at the top. Let's say this is another Al, and you'll see it turns red, but I have two Al's, turns orange. So what I recommend is you select the cell, go to edit, and let's say you have an Al01, and that'll make them unique. So everyone has a unique name. It's best to fill in as much information for each person or item that you're tracking to get best use out of it, especially for the pre-canned reports that are provided, or if you want to do some of the ad hoc reports that we showed earlier. Something else to be aware of, either if you're in a report or any of the other tabs where you have the selectable option to filter out. When you're done, I would make sure that you go back and set it to the filter to select all. Somebody else may be looking at that, or you may forget that something's filtered out, especially in the Data Entry tab where there are so many entries and you may not realize that you filtered something out, so you want to make sure that you set that back. If you're editing these selections in the Data Val tab, which once you have it all set up, you probably won't have much reason to edit it. But if you should end up editing it, you can always do a few things that will probably help you not make any mistakes. And so let's go to the Data Val tab. If you happen to say you don't want some of these values, you can simply, let's say in this column, you only want to use 3 or 4 of these. Generally, you never want to delete the NA or TBD, and you always have to have a minimum of 2 items in the list. The ones you don't want, simply highlight and hit the delete button, and they turn orange, and we'll show how to get rid of that in a minute. And let's say you don't want that one either. So now when you select in the data entry, you don't want to see blanks or come back over here and see that there's an error. So you can get rid of these in that list by simply selecting Sort A to Z. That resorts everything to the bottom of the list. And we'll scroll down, and you double click the red button as indicated by the instructions, and one by one it'll get rid of those orange cells, but only if they're at the bottom of the list. And so now we've eliminated all the blanks, and it looks nice and tidy. So when you go back to the personnel level type, you can now see that only the ones that we left in the list are selectable. The ones that we deleted turned red because it now, something that was previously selected should no longer be allowable. So then you can simply go back and reselect those one by one. And again, in the data validation or data val tab, you want to make sure you do not delete items that are in this color and pattern. There's a message at the top left, no edit. So do not change the text of these, and do not delete them. You can always add other items and delete those, and you can actually sort all of these as well. So if you enter information in, add an item that's not in the proper sequence alphabetically, you simply select the button and it resorts it so it's all in alphabetical order. In the Data Val tab, as mentioned earlier, you must have at least 2 items in each of these tables. I've already deleted all of the items except for 2 in this column. You can see there's director and lead. I can always add one, and the orange will show up and you edit it, hit return, and it updates automatically. Let me delete that back out. Now, if I tried to delete one more to try to get only one remaining, an error will pop and it describes what needs to be done. We are back in the Dashboard View tab, and again, as a reminder, at the top it'll show today's date, which is July 4th, and also the version of the file, which coincides with the name of the file that was saved. So right now we have 19LR07. So using good configuration management, you should always be saving your file frequently. Do a save as, and only update that last number. We'll go to 8. And that way, if I accidentally delete some information, I can close out and go back to the previous version. Special note on this number at the bottom here, I think I showed this earlier, that shows up in your reports. If you save the file without using that suffix, so for instance, I'll just delete this off here and save it. It will overwrite what was there. And now that version won't display anymore. It simply says general use. And it'll show it in each of the reports, which is we're looking at in the dashboard. I'm going to zoom in here. You can see it says general use. That general use will always stick there unless you select no, don't want to display the version. Or you can go back and resave it as, or close it out and open up one that has that version number.
This miscellaneous section reviews some of the do's and don'ts while using the tracker tool.
Here are a few do's and don't tips. I've switched to the instructions tab, and if you scroll down, there's an area that has do not do this. These are things that you certainly want to make sure that you don't do. So you want to make sure that you don't change any of the formulas or equations. Most of them are locked, so they cannot be changed. There are a few due to the limitations of the spreadsheet that must be left unlocked, but those are color-coded that says please do not change these. Should you change them, you're going to end up with miscellaneous results and cause some errors that may not be recoverable. Also, the cells in the spreadsheet, the workbook itself, it is protected. Don't try to defeat that protection, because again, that may or will most likely cause some errors that could be unrecoverable. Don't change the tab names. Here's an important one. If you're copying data, multiple datas for different cells, some are locked, so that cannot be done, but for those that can, you don't want to drag and drop the cell data. What you can do is do a copy and a paste value. These cells are locked, but there's a way to do a copy, and then in some cases you can say paste the value, which is right here. So that's what you want to do. So it looks like we might be able to, let's take a look here. Okay, let's try to copy something, see if I can show you an example. We'll copy this and see if it may not let us paste it in, but you want to do the paste values. Okay, we're going to get an error because it's locked. But if you need to do multiple copies, you can copy, if the cell will let you, copy the cell, and if you want to put it in multiple cells, let's say you want to put this in all these other 2 cells, you want to do a paste special, which is these numbers, right? So it's paste special values only. And then please do not hide or unhide rows or columns. That could also cause some errors, and also you may forget which rows and columns you hid. So please do not do that. The only time you can change a row is by moving this at the top, the width of the cell, and I'll show you that in another one, in another sheet. And if you end up accidentally unprotecting the spreadsheet, make sure you reprotect it without using a password. If you use a password, other than just a blank, it'll cause some errors and will prevent it from functioning correctly. There's some other things, but that's the gist. You can move the width of these rows and columns in many cases. There are some cases where they're going to be locked. The reason for that is, let's say in this note, it says you have to have a minimum of 3, which we do. And so too much information, you want to narrow that down. You can just simply slide these up and change those values. Or if you want to delete rows, simply highlight the entire row and then select your delete button. You don't want to go over here and select delete in this way. You must select the entire row to delete, but certainly don't select columns or any of the other rows. Only the data rows that you're entering information in can be deleted. I'll scroll over to an example of where the formula is not locked. So I'm going to scroll to the right, and we're in the data entry tab. This color, again, is mentioned several times, means please do not edit that. I'll click it, and there's a formula at the top. If that formula was to be changed or deleted, now it's going to cause an error, and you might not be able to recover from that. If that does occur, hopefully you've saved recently. Close out your file and then reopen the previous version that doesn't have that error. If I was to close out right now without saving, that change will not be recorded, and when I open it back up, the formula will be in there. So if I do an undo, sometimes that helps. Then some of these additional rows, like I indicated, you shouldn't delete, and some won't allow it, some may. But if you do, try to delete it, and it's locked, and error will show up. You may also see at the top of the columns where the formulas or values in these cells should not be edited. There's an indicator, do not edit. And that goes for all the columns where you should not be editing. Now, if there's other errors that occur, they may show up, as in here, it's indicating there's some error. It's something, data item not selected. That means that in the data entry tab, remember when it turned red when we deleted out the ones that are not selectable? This tells you that the error is still there, and you need to go back to the data entry tab and reselect those that are in red, so it's only one of the 2 allowable values. Something additional for the salary grades, there's a special note at the top of the column. I'm just sliding to the right here, looking for the salary grades. Okay, now we're in the salary grade area. I'm going to enlarge this so you can see it a little bit easier. Okay, this is the salary grade column. After editing or changing the values, you want to add values, delete them according to your HR needs. You absolutely need to do a sort by alphabet, A to Z. The reason for that is because this is going to affect your equations in the quartiles tab, where you set the values for potential salaries. In summary, the tool is easy to use. You can track many different things, people, items, comes pre-populated with selectable information and menus. It's also highly customizable and also shows the needed results for reports to help manage your business or area that you're leading or managing. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy it.